It's Friday, January 10th. Let's talk PlayStation. Okay, another very good week for PS5 stuff. There's actually a good amount to go over, so we'll start with our PS Plus reminders. The January titles are available right now. Uncharted: The Nathan Drake Collection and Goat Simulator. Plenty of time to download these games or add them to your library. Now, I want to acknowledge real quick, last 2 weeks we've been discussing the PS5 teraflop rumor. We're going to give that a break. Quite frankly, there's nothing to go on, nothing concrete. It was the same thing this week where just insiders going back and forth, confirming or denying if it is or isn't true. It's just exhausting. We're not getting anywhere. And thankfully, we have some official PS5 stuff to talk about this week, albeit it's not that exciting, but hey, it's official and Sony's actually talking about it. But before we get to that, this image leaked out this past week. Another PS5 dev kit. I think most are fully aware that this is a dev kit now, thankfully, unless people still think it's the final design. But yeah, this person had the tenacity to actually post this on their personal Facebook page, claiming they were a cleaner and they were cleaning a Prototype 1 dev kit. So we know this is what it looks like. We see a pretty good shot of the DualShock 5, or a prototype of the DualShock 5, and this is more closely resembled to the patent, where the controller looks a bit more bulky. You see that larger touchpad. I think if you weren't convinced about that previous picture, this one tells you that it is a more bulky controller with a larger touchpad. You can also more prominently see that that's USB-C on the top connection there. But otherwise, there's really no new information here, just that, hey, a more vivid dev kit picture, and somebody who in all likelihood either doesn't have a job anymore or is heavily penalized. Now, to the CES stuff. Last week, we did talk about this, that it seems like there may be a small PlayStation presence at CES. I cautioned, do not expect much. If anything, at the very most, Sony would come out and talk specs to some extent. And on the low end, it would be a small mention in passing, maybe a technical demo. We didn't even get that. However, there was a presence at CES, which is very new for Sony. So SIE President and CEO Jim Ryan took the stage at CES to just talk about some PlayStation stuff, and he actually gave us some numbers to start off with. PS4 currently at 106 million units sold worldwide. I was 2 million off in my predictions video, but unfortunately, originally in my 2019 video at the start of the year, I said 106 million, then I changed it to 108. That would have been dead on the money. 1.15 billion PS4 games sold. That's a very good attach rate for PS4. That means a lot of people are buying PS4 software for every one system sold. 5 million PSVR units. I got that one dead on, so feeling good about that. 103 million active PSN users. A lot of PlayStation Network users across PS Vita, PS3, PS4 still. 38.8 million active PS Plus members. And the big one, and I say that loosely because it's not big, the PlayStation 5 logo has been revealed. And, you know, what's funny is I feel good about it. You know why? Because I've been using a mock-up of that logo for the last year or so, and I was pretty accurate. Just that it was going to be basically the same font. I don't know why people were really surprised about this. It's very recognizable. I don't know why people thought it may have been like dramatically different. To be honest, the only time that Sony ever really did anything different with the font for PlayStation, well, first off, the basic font that has the full PlayStation name is pronounced Zernik or something like that, Zrnikic, something to that effect. And then they did the PS2 font, which is but even then, when you spell out PlayStation 2, it's the Zernik font. But then the PS2, just PS2, is a very thin blue font. PS3 started off with the Mata font, more commonly referred to as the Spider-Man font, but then that was it. They've been doing the same basic looking font for quite a while now, so it's recognizable, it makes sense, it works, and that's a good segue to our next news story, which is that just this logo announcement has seen some incredibly high social media presence. Like it's really blew up. Over on Instagram, this is like the most liked picture from any video game company, any video game brand on Instagram. It's at like almost 5 million likes now, I think. Close to it, 4.8, 4.9. Last time I checked, I don't know. I mean, it's just a lot. It's like way more than the previous record, which was some Fortnite post about, I think it was for the Infinity War thing that they were doing for a little bit. And it's, you know, to be honest, this is what I was going into when I was discussing for my last prediction that when both these machines launch, X Series X and PS5, despite the fact that I think Microsoft's making an incredibly compelling machine, I think they've learned their lesson, I think it's going to be great, I think Xbox fans are going to love it, but despite that, quite frankly, PlayStation is in all likelihood still the favorite to win. And when I mean that, just that it's just probably going to move the most hardware right off the bat until something either really dramatic happens, a little deep into the life cycle, or perhaps major unforeseen circumstances going into the launch lineup actually makes it seem like PlayStation fell flat on their face. But even then, I just find it hard to believe, right? Look at what's happening here. There's just the numbers are there. You can go to any social media platform, whether it's YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, Twitch, wherever PlayStation is, the numbers are there, and that's because they currently have market leadership. And so they are in a very compelling spot right now, where when they launch their next generation hardware, there's going to be a very good turnover of existing users just going right over to PlayStation 5. Again, unless there's really major unforeseen circumstances. But the really big deal about Sony CES was like not even PlayStation 5. Like, yeah, it was big, but the whole point of that conference was bringing out that concept electric self-driving vehicle, which understandably, like, gamers like didn't get how important that was, or they made jokes about it or whatever. But thankfully, this is like an industry I'm really familiar with. I don't want to talk about something I don't know about, but I'm like really into the EV self-driving scene and the auto industry in general. So when they pulled out that thing, I was like, whoa, this is huge, because Sony is a complete stranger to the EV self-driving industry, which is a hot up-and-coming market. But this is a big deal, and I only mention it in relation to a PlayStation news channel, is that getting into the auto industry, huge, massive undertaking, and extremely dangerous. The amount of capital and logistics needed to, for example, actually enter the auto industry with your own vehicle, it's incredibly dangerous, and I would think that most of Sony would be at complete risk of actually going under if they attempted to do something like that. Now, thankfully, that's not what's happening. Once the dust settled, it seemed pretty obvious that they were actually demonstrating Sony's technologies in a self-driving vehicle. So that concept car, they worked with a few manufacturers that already have EV platforms, electric powertrains. So they just probably worked with them, bought some existing EV drivetrain, slapped a nice little metal body on this thing, and they're really trying to show off 360-degree sensors, their stereo, and whatever else. They've probably got an infotainment system that they're trying to sell or whatever, some kind of over-the-air software updates. They're trying to provide technology to existing automakers and the other startups that are coming in. So thankfully, it doesn't appear that they're trying to actually enter the car scene with their own vehicle, but rather they're trying to find other revenue streams. And if they were to actually do that, mind you, they're a complete stranger to the auto industry, so I'm not very hopeful. I'm very skeptical about that. It's just such a dangerous scene, and other automakers, especially somebody like Tesla or even Waymo, Google, they're leaps and bounds ahead of everybody else when it comes to the tech and what's available and what's currently being developed. So Sony trying to get into this, I'm not, to me, this seems like a kind of a wasted effort, or at the very least, if they were going to do this, they should have been doing it literally like well over 5 years ago. But at least they're not making their own car, because that would be a really bad thing. But again, if they are just trying to provide technology, which is a big part of Sony's business, they actually provide a lot of camera sensors, a lot of other just basic technology that they license out to other companies. It's a great revenue stream for the company, and it just means that their value goes up if they become the forefront leader of providing these systems to other automakers or any other industry that they end up getting involved in. So that's really what ended up happening at CES. Now, after the dust settled from CES being over, SIE President CEO Jim Ryan did an interview with Business Insider Japan, which was later translated by Gamatsu, and we got some pretty interesting details about PlayStation 5. Nothing too crazy. When talking about the similar logo, he basically kind of said, we wanted something familiar, something that's very recognizable, but we also wanted to convey this sense of community. There's a lot of PS4 users that we still have out there. PS4 is going to be relevant well into the PS5's life cycle, and he wanted this like air of community where even if you don't get into PlayStation 5 right away and you're still playing on PS4, Sony has an obligation to those users and make it feel as though you are still part of that ecosystem. And quite frankly, that is what they are probably going to accomplish, which is that PS5 backwards compatible, but you can keep playing multiplayer games with a PS5 user if you're on PS4, and vice versa. Jim Ryan was then asked about a launch in Japan. Now, if you remember in 2013 when PS4 came out, it actually was delayed in Japan, its home country. It came out like three and a half months after the North America and Europe launch, which was really surprising to a lot of people. Japan is a market that isn't nearly as big nowadays when it comes to home console gaming, but still, it was a weird polarizing thing at the time. Jim had this to say in regards to that. I cannot comment on the timing of release or launch markets, talking about PlayStation 5 this time around. However, the 3-month delay for the release of PlayStation 4 in Japan was a decision that I was deeply involved in. There was reasonable ground for that decision, but these days I do not think that was a good idea. It was a decision made after much debate, but there may have been other options. So he's not directly providing any new information, but he's kind of laying a foundation of this expectation that when PlayStation 5 does come out, they are aiming for a worldwide launch in the US, Europe, and Japan. At least you would hope so. They can't really skip Europe. That would be a very bad decision. PlayStation's a very big dominant brand in Europe. Japan was the odd man out. It made sense in 2013, honestly. So it seems like there might be a launch in all three off the bat, which bodes well because that might mean that they're going to be on top of manufacturing. Now, another thing in that same interview, he talked about Gran Turismo Sport being played on PS5, which that's what they've been doing. They've been demoing a lot of existing games on PS5 hardware, not really unrealistic. We know that. They did it with Spider-Man, they're doing it with GT Sport. He mentioned how playing with the PS5 controller is a completely different experience. He was quoted as saying, "Playing the racing game Gran Turismo Sport with the PS5 controller is a completely different experience. While it runs well with the previous controller, there is no going back after you experience the detailed road surface via the haptic control and play using the adaptive triggers." Jim's going to say nice things about the controller, so not surprising, although interesting because they do seem to be very specific about talking about how this controller does have those features of the haptic feedback, the adaptive triggers. That was one of the first things that we learned about PlayStation 5 in those two very small Wired.com articles. The fact that it's something that they're talking about right away tells you that they might really be playing that up more than you would think right now. So I would hope that this is something very meaningful and it just doesn't feel like a controller rumbling in my hands. I hope it is as adaptive and as immersive as it seems. I want it to at least feel very much like they're describing it, where it's tough to go through mud or you can feel yourself being slick on ice. If it can really convey that feeling through the controller, I would be fascinated to see that. But moving on from that, in the same interview, in the same answer, Jim Ryan also said that there's a lot of things that we don't know about PS5. He was quoted as saying, "But you know, there are still more unique elements for PlayStation 5 to come that separate it from previous consoles. The bigger differences have yet to be announced." So take that for what it is. Surely there's a lot of things that we don't know about PS5. The big ticket items that they've already revealed, the SSD, the controller, some things that some people are already forgetting about that are confirmed, like the 100 gigabyte Blu-ray discs. It's got a 4K Blu-ray player. Games are going to be like modular in terms of the installs. You can install the single player, you can just install the multiplayer, you can install and uninstall these at any given moment. The marketing is being talked about, how it's, no load times and all that. So what else do we not know? I know backwards compatibility, people are going to bring that up. We've beaten that horse to death. Last week we explained what Sony's options are in that realm. I'll keep saying they're probably working on it. I don't know if it's going to actually come to the consumer as a final feature. It could have already been abandoned in terms of the project that was being worked on in relation to those patents, right? That's possible. But I think there's a big thing to be said about the UI of PlayStation 5. That's the big thing about consoles now. When it comes to playing on a console over a PC, we got to look at the advantages of a console. Why do people buy consoles? The simplicity of it, the ease of use, the good price to performance ratio, the exclusives. That's not what he's referencing here. So I think the UI makes a big case for things that we don't know. This console could provide a number of quality of life features that may seem very small but might be more significant. That would be one of my, safer guesses in relation to what he's saying, but we'll still have to wait and see. Realistically, it won't take too long because in the CES conference, I guess I should have mentioned that in the beginning part of the video, but he said that there will be more information in the coming weeks. So we don't have to wait that much longer to find out about PlayStation 5. It looks like that February reveal might end up happening. It's going to happen at any point where they're just it's going to be a thing where the press is going to start getting invites to an event, and we're all going to know at that point, there you go, that's going to be PS5's reveal event. Moving on, Sony has a new job listing for a gameplay programmer in San Diego, and that's very intriguing because, well, there's a secret team there that they haven't revealed just yet, working on what we've heard previously from previous job listings, a third-person action-adventure game, the next entry in cinematic storytelling. We know that they're working with Naughty Dog. Like, that's all fact. We know that. But this job listing has some qualifications for multiplayer, but also desired qualifications of shipping a first-person shooter. So that's a pretty interesting U-turn. Not really sure what's going on there. It's very distinct that having shipped a first-person shooter is a desired qualification, and it's not listed under actual qualifications, and this is still just a gameplay programmer, so maybe they want somebody that's familiar with shooting mechanics and dynamics, and it doesn't necessarily have to be strictly, third person. They would want to see somebody with outside experience doing first person as well. I'm trying to theorize where this makes a lot of sense, but there could be a completely dramatic shift in the project, or there could be another team working on another title, but that's taking out a lot at that point. So who knows, just a job listing, but it is different from what we've heard about so far. Now, with all of our official information out of the way, let's get to some rumors. This one is about a Silent Hills artist who recently tweeted out that they are working on a new project as a core member and that they hope it doesn't get canceled. This is, kind of one of those things where it's stirring the pot. It's drawing a lot of conclusions very quickly, but it's very telling when this particular artist says, I hope it doesn't get canceled. They've worked on a number of Silent Hill projects, and we never talked about it directly on Let's Talk PlayStation, but there was this really wild Reddit post a while back claiming that Kojima was going to start working on a Silent Hills again with Konami. I know that's super far-reaching, right? But it is one of those things where you kind of look at that and you go, that's a very purposeful tweet. Now, this next news story, I think a lot of people missed this one, but Bluepoint sent out a tweet saying, stay hungry, #ResetEra, referencing the forum that constantly loves to, think about, speculate what's going to happen in the games industry. And the tweet was a screenshot of a game with, it says title in the middle, in the bottom right corner it says loading or fast loading, something like that. Then there's like a little orchid or a little flower or something. This tweet was quickly deleted because people were picking up that it was probably them teasing a Demon's Souls remake, which that little thing in the bottom right corner looks like the lotus in Demon's Souls, which heals your character. So what does that tell you? I mean, the tweet's deleted. That, more than anything, I think means a lot. It could mean nothing, but whenever a tweet's deleted, right there is pretty suspect. Moving on, we've got a rumor here from the Twitter account FoxyGames_UK. I don't really follow this Twitter account. From what I've read, he's gotten things correct, but for as many times as I've read that, I've read plenty of people saying it doesn't get anything correct. So, and it is a pretty vague tweet, but he says that Sony at some point is going to reveal or very soon they're going to reveal a major studio acquisition. So it's vague enough to where I don't even think this is really super newsworthy, because at some point they are going to acquire another studio. But the fact that it says that it's soon means, well, maybe this would be in conjunction with PS5's eventual reveal event, which I think would be a pretty appropriate time to announce a studio acquisition if it was going to happen. Part of my prediction was Bluepoint Games. I think they've proven their chops when it comes to creating games for Sony. Remedy is a good example, but you know what I have been actually overlooking for a while, and I didn't realize that Remedy was a public company, and that actually complicates matters a bit in terms of acquiring them, because I think that information has to pretty much come out that they're attempting to acquire them, not necessarily that they can acquire them and then keep it a secret and then come out and reveal it publicly, like on stage or anything like that. I don't think they can do something like that with a publicly traded company. So I think that complicates matters a bit. Doesn't mean that they can't acquire them, but I think that's what has to play out if they were to do something like that, where they basically have to announce the acquisition is forthcoming, rather than or I guess they could just do that on stage and say that we're going to acquire Remedy, even though it isn't finalized or anything. But yeah, not much to really go on. It's not, whether he's right or wrong, it's bound to happen. I will mention that I've been keeping up with most previous rumors regarding PS5 to go back and fact check what is or isn't correct, and at some point we'll do some sort of grand video after PS5 is well released, and we'll check out all the rumors that we've been discussing on LTPS and talk about that for what it's worth. Now let's get to Let's Talk Plus, the weekly Let's Talk PlayStation giveaway, where one of you could win a $10 PlayStation Network code. I would like to congratulate this viewer right here. I'll be contacting you very soon via email or Twitter. If you would like to win, very simple, follow the link down below. Supporting the channel, a number of ways gains you an entry. We do this every single week on Let's Talk PlayStation. I am trying to pay for your games. Those are some of the news stories I want to talk about you all from this past week. On Tuesday, we did some very annoying PSN trophies. I shared 5 of them in there with you, and assuming you all enjoyed that, we'll do it again at some point, but you have to share some trophies with me. What do you think is really annoying on PSN that you try to earn? And we might do 5 more in a follow-up video at some point. This coming Tuesday, don't know what I'm doing, but that Tuesday video will always be there. So tune in, as always, and that's it. That concludes this week's episode of Let's Talk PlayStation. I'm Ryan Panecki. Thank you all so much for talking with me, and I will see you all next Friday.